Welcome to another episode of Cyber Secrets.
Install malware on their system that calls home and take over that system using Metasploit. What I'm using is a customized version of Kali. So when you go to Applications, then you go to Kali Linux, then we're going to want to go to Exploit Tools, then down to Social Engineering Toolkit, and Set. Once Set opens up, we're going to go ahead and use 1 for the Social Engineering Toolkit, or Social Engineering Attack. Then we're going to do 4 for create a payload and a listener. We're going to enter the IP address, which is our system, or the system we want to call home to. We need to find out what the IP address is first, so we're just going to do basic ifconfig. As we can see, it's 192.168.0.13. So at this point, we're going to type in 192.168.0.13. Now what we're going to do is choose 9 for the metinterpreter reverse shell. Then we're also going to choose 4 as a backdoored executable. We set it up to listen on port 453 to make it seem like normal traffic or HTTPS. So we're going to look into the folder user/share/set, and it's going to create here in just a minute a payload.exe. We're going to copy that payload over to the Kingston or the USB thumb drive. The reason why we're doing that is trying to get the target or the victim to run this application to exploit the system. So start to listener, let's hit yes, because it did create the payload. Once it started, that's great. Now we're going to copy the payload.exe over. Once we copy it over, we're going to try to get it something that we know that they're going to run. Because I see that there's an uninstaller.exe, I'm just going to remove that and rename the payload.exe to uninstaller. You could rename it to installer, setup, auto run, anything you want to, anything that you think can get the other person to run it. Now that it's changed uninstaller.exe, we're going to go ahead and eject the USB thumb drive and try to get them to run it. Awesome, they just ran it, now it's been exploited. Metinterpreter session 3 opened. They think it's port 453. They got in. We're going to run a PS to look at some of the processes that are running just to make sure we got it. Great. Now we're going to escalate privileges by running get system. Great. It did get system. Now we have full system rights. We have full access to the system. Something that I always like to do is run the webcam snapshot just to see if they have a webcam. In this specific instance, we couldn't, or at least we couldn't run it. So we'll do a screenshot to see what's running. This is going to grab whatever's running on the screen and save it to a JPEG file. We'll get to that later. Now we're going to record content that's running from the microphone. There's all kinds of great things you can do with the Metasploit metinterpreter. So that -D is timing and 10 seconds. Started, stop, that's great. Now we have that rag.wave. We'll look at that later. We did PWD to see where it ran from, and it looks like it did run from their USB drive. And now we're going to run the help command, which shows you all of the other options that are there. Hashdump is a great item. The web chat, webcam, there's all kinds of things such as download. Once you get access to the system interpreter, pretty much the whole thing is up and open. So now we're going to detach it and look at the content. So we're looking at the JPEG that we took a snapshot of, or the screenshot. And once it comes up, it'll show you what was running on their screen. And as you can see, a website, and it was running a session of Cyber Secrets. So go ahead and close out of here. And let's see if it actually recorded anything. That rag pcgsc.wave is the audio that was running when we did the recording. Now if you're doing a pen test, what if management doesn't get it or doesn't understand that you've actually compromised the system? Well, a visual option does help quite a bit, especially in explaining how you've been able to compromise the other computer. We're going to use Armitage. The benefit about Kali is it has a lot of tools built into it. So one of the tools that we're going to use is if we go down to Kali Linux and down to exploitation tools, and then network exploitation, we're going to use Armitage. Armitage is a graphic interface to Metasploit. It does almost everything Metasploit can do, with a very few limitations. Plus, again, it's more graphical. So, once it starts, we're going to set up a listener. So we're going to use set the same way. We create the payload, we get them to run the payload, but what we're going to do is then listen with Armitage for the incoming connection. And then once it's incoming, you'll be able to see a small little computer. Once it exploits, then it'll turn red with little lightning streaks across it. It does take a little bit of time to start Armitage, but again, it's running Metasploit in the back end. So at this point, go up to Armitage, then down to Listeners. We're going to do a set lhost, make sure that we have the right IP address. So again, it's 192.168.0.13, so that's correct. Go and hit OK. And hit OK again. Then we're going to go back to Armitage and then set the listener for an incoming connection. So that's going to be a reverse or wait for. At this point, we're going to choose 443, just like we did before, and instead of basic shell, we're going to do Metinterpreter, and then start listener. Now, it's a waiting game. Wait for the victim or the target to actually run the application, run the executable. Once they do, that's when you know you're hit. So now it looks like it's all set up. Now it's a waiting game. Looks like we got one. At 192.168.0.14, that victim has been compromised. You see the computer does have a red outline with a little electricity around it. Right-click on it, left-click on Metinterpreter, exploit, and now we're going to try to get some sort of webcam. This one we're going to go and take a picture and see what it comes up with. And now we're going to want to right-click on it again, explore, and now let's do screenshot. And again, see what it comes up with. A lot of the content in here, unfortunately, stores in the back end. You don't get to see it right away, but you can when you view the stored content. But as you can see, we did a screenshot. Still has pretty much the same stuff we looked at before. And so we'll get a couple other options. Right-click, left-click Metinterpreter, explore. If you browse files, you can see all the files that are on the system. You can even upload files if you want to. And this is also where you can do stuff such as mess with the timestamps of the files. So we're going to go to the C drive. Perfect. You see the recycling bin. We see the data. We see the hyperfile.sys. We see all the kind of content that we would see if we're normally on a basic C drive. Now we're going to go to Interact, Metinterpreter shell, command shell, those things you can look at as well. But now we're going to want to migrate. So we exploited one vulnerability or running a specific executable. With migrating, we're actually bumping up to another executable. So if that program that we were running originally crashes, the program that we migrated to hopefully will still be there. And we dumped the hashes, so we can look at that later as well. So at this point, we've exploited with Social Engineering Toolkit and a graphical version of using Armitage.
The Cyber Secrets web series covers computer forensics, hacking, and everything in between. Thank you for your continued support of Cyber Secrets. With the reboot of the different series, we want to ask if you have ideas for future content or suggestions for improvement. Please let us know. Click subscribe for new episodes of Cyber Secrets.